The other issue to do with aviation was, of course, the Prime Minister in question time being asked about the decision that benefited Qantas and screwed you over, the taxpayers, but more importantly, the consumers of Australia, by about 30-40%, and what the flight costs are for us to leave this beautiful country on the hope of coming back after a holiday. Well, the Prime Minister thought, done and dusted, this issue's over, because I never spoke to Qantas.
I had one extensive conversation with someone about Qatar. It was not someone from Qantas. It was not someone from Qantas.
Don't you love Anne Ali, a Minister of the Crown? Oh, absolutely, sir. Completely agree. Does everyone else agree on TV? Well, of course, why would he have had to even have any conversations with Qantas? Because, you see, the government itself is so used to a cosy relationship with the people who decide who doesn't just sit at the front end of the plane, but also who gets the super secret, special, mysterious chairman's lounge where you will not be interrupted by any of those pesky members of the public. Well, of course, Stephen Jones, the Assistant Treasurer, told us last week that they made the decision to hold back on the amount of flights that Qatar would be able to come into Sydney and Melbourne because it was in the national interest to protect Qantas's profit. So do you really have to have a meeting with the people who you know are already going to have your back because you've got theirs when it comes to every time they have to fly? With the exception, of course, of when they get the private jet paid for by the taxpayer between the party conference in Brisbane, the Matildas in Sydney and back to the party conference in Brisbane. But of course, because it's the Labor Party, they were able to walk back the comments, which technically means, were you lying now or were you lying then? But shh, don't ask that question. New government, best government ever, they're amazing. But after the Prime Minister was forced to actually answer this question, or at least get near it, because the Speaker of the House not particularly interested in pushing people to answer the actual questions or remain relevant. Remember the question about your golf clubs where he wasn't able to answer the question, although his staff was briefing members of the gallery? Well, this continued, of course, with Anthony Albanese saying that, well, look, if Qatar wants to fly bigger planes to different airports than Sydney, they can do that any time they want.
And they can fly as many flights as they like into Adelaide, into Gold Coast, into Avalon, into Hobart, into Canberra.
Yeah, OK. What about for the customers that live in Sydney, I think it's called, at Kingsford Smith Airport? Yeah, it's the one that Anthony Albanese says should shut down in the middle of the night because of aircraft noise. But the second Sydney airport, which will be able to take more flights from Qatar, well, that'll run 24 hours because it's in Western Sydney, and those people, well, they're just stupid and they'll vote for us anyway, right? Di Lee, a little reminder that in the seat of Cabramatta, or Fowler, that's not always going to be the case, and I expect there's going to be quite an issue about that 24-hour noise issue in Western Sydney, but that's a couple of years down the track. But then there was this, and for anyone who does not live in Sydney, Melbourne or Brisbane, you would have thrown things at the television when the Prime Minister was saying this.
We have the most competitive aviation market in the world, bar none.
Oh, and the prices, they are just, $20 tickets everywhere, right? Now, of course, this bloke who has worked for government since the 1980s as a staffer, then a member of parliament, then a minister, a shadow minister and Prime Minister now, well, he, of course, has got billions of dollars of his own jet-setting all over the place, which is not paid for by the party, but it's paid for by the taxpayer. And can we knock off this nonsense of him turning up and waving as if there's a crowd? I have been to these things for multiple Prime Ministers. No one is there. They're just waving as sort of a bit of Seppo bullshit like they do with the American president getting on and off planes.